Jack woke up early in the morning, as usual, without an alarm clock. He was 43 years old, and over the long years of working as a manager in a construction company, his body had become accustomed to waking him up at dawn. He quietly got out of bed, trying not to wake his wife. Emma was still asleep, covered with a blanket up to her chin. Jack lingered his gaze on her face for a moment. In 15 years of marriage, she had hardly changed, still as beautiful. Only small wrinkles had appeared in the corners of her eyes, and the golden strands in her hair were now shaded by several silver threads. He smiled to himself. Time takes its toll, but Emma was still the most attractive woman to him. However, Jack noticed that lately he and his wife had begun to talk heart to heart less often. Everyday hustle and bustle, work, caring for the children, all this took away time and energy. I'll have to arrange an evening for Emma and me alone, he thought, pulling on his t-shirt. It had been a long time since they had gone anywhere, just the two of them, without the children and without talking about business. On the first floor, in the kitchen, it was quiet. Jack put the coffee on in the Turk. He had recently become interested in making coffee in the Eastern style, and the family appreciated the new morning ritual. While the freshly ground powder was warming up in the water, he looked out the window. It was slowly getting light outside. The neighboring houses were drowning in the morning haze. A typical suburban landscape. Neat green lawns, cars parked at the side of the road, quiet streets. Another hour and the area would come alive. Neighbors would start leaving for work. Schoolchildren would start heading to the bus stop. Meanwhile, the coffee had boiled, and Jack quickly took the Turk off the stove, pouring the aromatic drink into mugs. For himself, black strong, just as he liked. For Emma, with a drop of almond syrup, she adored this aroma. The children did not need coffee, they preferred orange juice or tea. Jack set the table, set out mugs, poured juice for the kids, got cornflakes and bowls out of the cabinet. He was just serving fresh bagels spread with cream cheese on plates when he heard the first footsteps on the stairs. Jack, their eldest son, a tall 16-year-old with a sleepy face, came into the kitchen, yawning, and sank into a chair at the table. "Good morning, son," Jack greeted him, holding out a bowl of cereal. "Uh-huh," Jack muttered vaguely, rubbing his eyes. Mornings were not the friendliest time of day for a teenager, and Jack understood that. He smiled slightly and ruffled his son's tousled dark hair. "Wake up, champion. Today, I think, is the algebra test." "Yeah," Jack poured milk into his cereal bowl and winced. "Don't remind me. My brain doesn't work in the morning." "If you concentrate, you'll manage," the father answered calmly. "You're a capable guy." Jack just shrugged and started eating his cereal. Jack took a package of cream cheese out of the refrigerator. "Do you want me to spread your bagel?" he asked his son. "Go ahead," Jack said with his mouth full. Jack grinned. Jack grew quickly, ate for two, and grew taller by leaps and bounds. His son took after him, broad-shouldered and strong. He would be a tall man, taller than Jack. While he was spreading cheese on his son's second bagel, Emma appeared in the kitchen, already dressed in a formal skirt and blouse. She had her hair pulled back into a messy bun. She had a phone in her hand, and she unlocked the screen with a quick, familiar gesture. Seeing her husband and son, Emma looked up from her phone and smiled. "Good morning." "Hi, Mom," Jack said with his mouth full. "Morning." Jack stepped toward his wife and kissed her on the cheek. "The coffee is just ready, with syrup for you, as usual." "Oh, great." Emma looked slightly distracted. She placed her phone face down on the table and picked up her mug, inhaling deeply. "Almonds?" "Yes," Jack nodded. He liked taking care of little things like that. "How did you sleep?" "It's fine." She took a sip of coffee and closed her eyes for a second in satisfaction. "Wonderful. You're a master of coffee." "I'm trying," he chuckled. Jack noticed Emma glancing quickly at her phone, lying on the table next to her. She looked away almost immediately, but Jack caught the fleeting alarm. Was he imagining it, or was she expecting a text? Emma rarely used her phone at breakfast, except to check her email. But now she was clearly expecting something. "Having a hard day at work today?" Jack asked casually, sitting down at the table next to him. What? Oh, no, I think so, Emma answered and shrugged her shoulders vaguely. A typical day, meeting with a client in the afternoon. It's clear. What do you have? I have a meeting with the contractors this morning, then I'll go and look at the site. I'll probably be back by dinner, Jack replied. Jack had already finished his cereal and stood up from the table. I'm ready to go, the bus will be there soon. Did you bring your lunch with you? Emma asked her son. Yeah, sandwiches in the backpack, Jack responded, and after a pause added, I might need to stay in the library after school today, do some homework with the guys. Okay, but not too long, Jack nodded. Should I pick you up, or can you get there yourself? I'll take the bus myself, don't worry. The sun was already heading towards the hallway. Have a nice day, Emma called after him. Yeah, and you too, Jack responded, disappearing behind the door. Jack heard the front door slam. His son had gone to the bus stop. He glanced at his watch. It was time to wake up the youngest. I'll go up for Emma, he said to his wife. Yes, I'll wake her up, otherwise she won't get up on her own. Emma nodded, taking another sip of coffee. The two of them walked up to the second floor. Emma, their 10-year-old daughter, was asleep, curled up in bed under a blanket with Disney characters on it. Jack sat quietly on the edge of the bed and gently shook his daughter's shoulder. Wake up, sunshine. Morning has come. The girl closed her eyes and tried to pull the blanket higher. 5 more minutes, she muttered sleepily. No, 5 minutes or you'll be late for school, Jack said softly but insistently. Come on, Emmy. Uh-huh, Emma opened her eyes. Dad, can I not go? My throat hurts a little. Emma, standing in the doorway, frowned. Does your throat hurt? A lot? Emma, realizing from her mother's tone that the simulation would not work, sighed. Not very much, but there is a little bit. Jack exchanged a knowing glance with his wife and smiled with the corner of his lips. Let's see what the temperature is after breakfast, he said to his daughter. If it's bad, then we'll decide. Emma, knowing this cunning parental move, sat up in bed with displeasure. Okay, I'm going, she muttered, resigned to the inevitable. While Emma was helping Emma dress and braid her hair, Jack returned to the kitchen. His gaze fell involuntarily on Emma's phone, left on the table. The screen was still facing down. For some reason, this pricked him. Emma didn't usually do that. Leaving the phone facing down seemed like she was hiding something. But Jack immediately caught himself. Nonsense. Why would she be hiding something? He was distracted by his daughter, who had finally gotten ready and appeared in the kitchen. Emma was already in her school uniform, a blue and white set, skirt and blouse, and the sleep had vanished from her face. The girl was eating a bagel with cheese, chatting about the day ahead, about how they had music class today, and she would finally show the teacher the song she had learned on the piano. Jack and Emma listened to their daughter's chatter with a smile. Such moments warmed Jack's soul. He loved morning conversations about trifles. It created a feeling of comfort and family happiness. When breakfast was over, Emma looked at her watch. We should get going. I'll drop Emma off at school on the way. Okay, Jack stood up and started collecting empty plates. Then I'll go straight to the office. I have a lot of work to do at the site today. Yes, Emma picked up the phone from the table and slid her finger across the screen. Jack noticed her quickly reading a message and then put the phone back in her purse. A slight worry seemed to prick him with a needle. Who was writing to her so early in the morning? But he again drove away his suspicion. Who knows, maybe a colleague was asking about a meeting with a client. Jack helped Emma put on her backpack and kissed his daughter on the top of her head. Behave yourself, sunshine. Bye, Dad. Emma hugged him. Love you. And I love you too, baby. Emma stood at the door, fingering a bunch of keys. Jack leaned over and kissed her on the lips. The kiss was short and crumpled, as if his wife was in a hurry to get out. See you this evening, she said, moving away slightly. I'll probably be there after 6 too. Don't expect me early. Okay, call me if you're late, Jack nodded. Certainly. Emma had already run out onto the porch. Emma followed. Jack waved as he watched his wife and daughter climb into the family SUV. The engine roared, and the car rolled down the driveway and out onto the street. As they rounded the corner, Jack closed the door. The house was silent, except for the ticking of the kitchen clock. He collected the dirty dishes from the table and loaded them into the dishwasher. He briefly wondered again who might have texted Emma that morning. But he dismissed it. It was probably nothing special. She had a friend, Megan, who loved to text each other in the morning and discuss the news. Perhaps she had sent something. Having tidied up the kitchen, Jack put on his jacket, took his car keys and briefcase with papers from the table. Going outside, he breathed in the fresh morning air. The day promised to be clear and warm. At such moments, he felt especially keenly grateful for his life. A good house, a wonderful family, a beloved wife, and 2 wonderful children. What else did one need to be happy? Jack didn't know what trials awaited him in the coming days. For now, he was calmly driving to work, not suspecting how much his life would change very soon. That evening, Jack got home a little before 6. He usually stayed in the office until 5:30, but a contractor meeting had been canceled and the site was going according to plan, so he was able to leave early. On the way, he stopped at the store and bought some fresh steaks, deciding to treat his family to a barbecue dinner. The weather was great, and Jack imagined himself and Emma and the kids sitting in the backyard, chatting about the day. When Jack pulled up to the house, he noticed that Emma's car had not returned yet. It was 10 to 6. Emma had said she wouldn't be home until 6. Well, he would have time to get ready. Jack carried out the grocery bags and went into the kitchen to marinate the steaks. Jack and Emma were already home. Jack went up to his room to do his homework, or, most likely, to sit on social networks. Jack understood that his son was trying his best with school, but the smartphone was more attractive than algebra. Emma settled in the living room with coloring books. Jack caught a glimpse of his daughter lying on the carpet, coloring another picture. "Dad, is Mom not here yet?" she asked, hearing her father's footsteps in the kitchen. "Not yet, my dear," he replied. "She should be here soon." Jack turned on the radio in the kitchen. He marinated steaks in olive oil and spices and chopped vegetables for a salad while listening to soft music. Family dinners in the fresh air were always good for everyone, for the children and for him and Emma. He even thought that it would be nice to take a family walk in the park after dinner. 6 o'clock passed and Emma still hadn't shown up. Jack dialed her number. The beeps were unusually slow before his wife answered. Her voice sounded a little tense. "Hello, Jack." "Hello, darling. Where are you?" "We're waiting for you," he asked softly. "Oh, sorry," Emma sighed into the phone. "We had a client stay late. We had to discuss the contract longer. I'm just leaving the office." "I see. Will you be there soon?" "Yes, I think I'll be home in half an hour," she replied. "Sorry it happened. Start without me if you want, don't wait." "It's okay, we'll wait." Jack held back a slight disappointment. He had expected everyone to sit down together. "I marinated the steaks and made the salad. I'll just fry them when you get here so they're hot." "Great," Emma tried to sound cheerful. "Thank you, darling. I'll try to be quicker." "Be careful when driving," he reminded me. "Of course," the wife responded. "I'll be there soon." They hung up. Jack thoughtfully put his phone away. Something in Emma's voice struck him as odd, as if she were nervous or in a hurry to end the conversation. Probably in a hurry to get out of the office, he told himself. Another 40 minutes passed before the sound of Emma's car's engine was heard in the driveway. It was almost 6:45. Jack, and Emma came out onto the porch to meet her. Emma got out of the car looking tired. Her hair was slightly disheveled, beads of sweat appeared on her forehead, as if she was nervous or in a hurry. Emma ran up to her mother. "Mommy, hi. You've been taking a long time." "Hi, honey." Emma hugged her daughter, but somehow absent-mindedly. "Sorry, work kept me late." "Hi." Jack leaned over and kissed his wife on the cheek. He smelled a faint, unfamiliar scent of perfume mixed with a hint of tobacco. It was strange Emma didn't smoke, and her own perfume usually smelled like vanilla, but this was different. Jack winced involuntarily, but said nothing. Jack just nodded to his mother from the porch. "Hey, Mom." "Hi, Jack." She smiled at her son, then turned to Jack. "I'm sorry about this." "Everything's fine." He touched her shoulder. "How are you? Are you tired?" "A little." Emma looked away, opening the trunk of the car and taking out her bag with her laptop. "We barely got it sorted out with the client. He was so picky." "Well, that's good that we've sorted it out," Jack said peacefully. "Let's go to the table. The steaks are already waiting." The family walked out to the backyard, where Jack had lit the grill ahead of time. As the coals burned, he glanced at his wife. Emma was sitting at a wooden table, her eyes closed, her face turned to the light evening breeze. She seemed lost in her thoughts, trying to avoid meeting her husband's gaze. Jack started grilling steaks. Emma chattered happily about school, about how she had gotten an A for her song in music class. Jack commented under his breath that at his school, music would have been the last subject in which anyone got an A more like P. He glanced at his mother from time to time with a hint of wariness. The teenager seemed to sense the tension in the air. Emma ate little. She barely touched her steak, only poked at it with her fork, and leaned more on the salad. Jack noticed this. "Don't you like it? Overcooked?" "No, no, everything is great, delicious." Emma responded quickly and even cut off a piece of meat, putting it in her mouth. "I just don't have much of an appetite after that client. He got on my nerves." Jack nodded, but the aftertaste remained. Emma loved his steaks and usually asked for more. But here she barely touched it. After dinner, the children went their separate ways. Jack went upstairs again. Emma sat down to watch TV. Jack and Emma cleared the table together. It was getting dark, and crickets were chirping in the backyard. Jack was carrying the dirty dishes out to the kitchen when he noticed Emma standing by the open living room window, her back turned, talking quietly into the phone. He strained his ears. "Yes, me too. Of course. No, tomorrow won't work, I promised. Yes, he's at home. I'll write later, okay?" The wife's voice was barely audible. She clearly didn't want anyone to hear her conversation. Jack deliberately clinked the dishes as he entered the living room. Emma flinched and turned to him, quickly shoving her phone into her pocket. "Who were you talking to?" he asked, deliberately carefree. "What?" "Oh, Megan called," Emma said after a short pause, naming her friend. She asked how things were. Okay, Jack decided not to show that he had heard fragments, but inside he felt a stirring of uneasiness. Later, when they went to bed, Jack finally sensed that something was wrong. Emma was unusually silent and immediately turned to the wall, citing fatigue. Previously, they would sometimes talk or make love in the evenings after putting the children to bed. This time, however, his wife was clearly not in the mood for either. Jack couldn't fall asleep for a long time. He tossed and turned in bed, listening to Emma's even breathing. The thoughts in his head were all jumbled up. She was nervous, distant, hiding something. His mind told him that she was probably just worried about work or some of her own affairs. It happens a person can withdraw into themselves from stress. But somewhere deep down, an alarming suspicion was brewing, which Jack didn't want to agree with. A couple of weeks passed like this. The situation did not improve in the following days. Emma stayed late several times, citing either a rush at work or a sudden girls' night out with a friend. At home, she was absent-minded, often sitting on the phone, sometimes going into another room to answer a call. At the slightest question from Jack, she tried to laugh it off or answered too briefly. One evening, noticing that his wife was in the shower, Jack decided to check her phone. His heart pounded at the thought alone. It was not good to go through someone else's phone, even if it was his own wife's. But anxiety and jealousy whispered that this way he would find out the truth. Emma's phone was lying on the bedside table. Jack picked it up and pressed a button. The device asked for a password. He used to know her graphic key. They didn't even hide their passwords from each other. But a couple of months ago, Emma changed the unlocking method to a digital code, and Jack didn't know it. This was also strange. Why did she need to change the password and not tell him? He cursed quietly to himself and put the phone back, still unable to look at anything. Soon, chance provided him with a new batch of disturbing guesses. A week after that memorable dinner, when Emma had barely eaten, Jack had to stay late at work. At 10 o'clock, he finally got free and went home. Usually, Emma would already be home at that time, putting Emma to bed. But when Jack drove onto their street, he saw familiar headlights in the distance. The family SUV was driving towards him from the direction of their house. Jack recognized his wife's car. It was strange. What was she doing on the street at 10 o'clock in the evening? They drew level. Jack stopped and, flashing his headlights, made Emma stop too. He got out of his car and went to the driver's window of Emma's car. Emma looked clearly agitated. "Jack, why are you so late?" "Work," he answered briefly, looking around the car. There was no one else in the car. "Where were you? You didn't say you were going somewhere tonight." "I." She trailed off, her gaze briefly lingering on her hands gripping the steering wheel. "Megan asked me to give her a ride home after the meeting. She had too much to drink, so." "After what meeting?" Jack frowned. "Well, we were sitting with the girls in a cafe. Remember I said it was a hen party today?" Emma spoke quickly, as if she was giving a prepared speech. "Megan had too many cocktails. She felt sick. I drove her." Jack silently looked at his wife. The story seemed plausible, but something didn't add up. She said she'd be at the bachelorette party. Jack remembered that she'd mentioned plans to meet up with her friends a couple of days ago. But now his suspicion made him doubt every word. "Are you sure everything is okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah, sure." Emma nodded and tried to smile. "Sorry I didn't text you. My phone died, and then I was busy with Megan." Jack continued to stand next to the car, not knowing what to say. He hadn't detected any obvious lies. Everything could have been as she described. And yet the worm of doubt did not give up. "Okay, let's go home," he finally said and stepped back. At home, Emma was already asleep. Jack was sitting in his room with headphones on. Jack and Emma also went to bed almost without a word. The mood was icy. Emma lay down on the very edge of the bed, turning away, and almost immediately, it seemed, fell asleep. Jack stared at the ceiling for a long time. He understood. A little more and suspicions would eat him up from the inside. Something had to be done to dot all the I's. The next day, Jack made a decision. Enough of this guesswork. He needed to get it all out in the open. He felt he couldn't live in limbo any longer, suspecting the worst without proof. Plus, late that night, he dug through his bank statements and found several suspicious expenses: a dinner at an expensive restaurant, a bouquet of flowers he hadn't seen at home. That was the last straw. On Friday night, Emma called again to say she would be late. Her boss had asked her to stay late to prepare a presentation for an important client on Monday. Jack was calm on the phone, wishing her luck and not letting on that anything was wrong. But inside, he felt a sinking feeling. This was his chance to test her words. The kids went to spend the night at their grandmother's. That night, Jack's sister, Aunt Laura, had invited the nephews over for the weekend. It was a good thing. The absence of children made things easier, no matter what happened next. Around 6 o'clock in the evening, Jack pulled up to the office building where Emma worked. The parking lot was half empty. The workday had ended for most of the employees. Emma's car, however, was still parked. Jack parked a little further away, trying not to attract attention. His heart was pounding somewhere in his throat. He found himself wishing his suspicions were wrong. Better to torture himself with jealousy in vain than to confirm the nightmare. Around 7, people started leaving the building, apparently those who had also stayed late. Jack peered intently, trying not to miss his wife. Finally, around 7:30, he saw Emma. His wife was not alone. A tall man in a light gray jacket was walking down the steps next to her. They were chatting animatedly about something. Jack recognized Emma at once. Even from a distance, he could see her slender silhouette, light hair, and white blouse under a light coat. He also remembered the man. It seemed to be her colleague in the department, Richard, if Jack remembered correctly, the name his wife had once mentioned. Jack crouched in the car, watching them. Emma and Richard walked down to the parking lot, stopped by Emma's car. The man leaned too close to her. Jack tensed. They seemed to be conversing about something, and suddenly Richard gently touched Emma's arm. Even from a distance, it was clear that this was a gesture of affection and not a casual touch from a colleague. Emma did not pull away. On the contrary, she smiled shyly at him in response. Jack felt the adrenaline rush through his veins. His chest tightened as if he had been hit. He continued to stare, unable to look away. The next second, Richard leaned over and kissed Emma on the lips. Jack's vision swam. The ground seemed to be slipping out from under his feet. He almost lost his balance, not believing what he saw. His wife kissing another man in a deserted parking lot late at night. While Jack was coming to his senses, Emma and Richard had already stopped kissing. She said something quietly to him, touching his chest with her palm. Jack opened the door of his car and resolutely walked towards them. "Emma!" His voice sounded sharp in the silence of the parking lot. The wife started and turned around. At the sight of her husband, her face instantly lost color, her eyes widened in horror. Richard also recoiled, peering intently at Jack as he approached. "Jack," Emma breathed, taking a step forward. "It's not what you think." But Jack was already beside himself. Deception, fear, and rage engulfed him in an explosive mixture. "Not what I think," he shouted, feeling his voice breaking. "I saw you kissing him." Emma turned even paler. "Please calm down. Let me explain." "Explain?" Jack almost lost control of himself. He turned his fiery gaze to Richard. "And you, bastard, what do you say?" Richard raised his hands, palms forward, making a placating gesture. "Jack, yes, let's talk calmly." Calmly, Jack stepped closer to him. "You're sleeping with my wife, and I'm supposed to talk about it calmly." Richard blushed and clenched his jaw. "Look, things are not right between us." Jack didn't let him finish. Anger overwhelmed him. Richard staggered. "Damn it." "Jack, stop it," Emma screamed, throwing herself between her husband and her lover. She grabbed Jack's arm, trying to pull him away. "Please don't." Jack breathed heavily, his fists clenched. He wanted to hit Richard again, but through the rage that had surged up, he still saw Emma's frightened face. Her hands were shaking, tears were shining in her eyes. "Step aside, Emma," he said through clenched teeth. "I want to hear what this bastard has to say." "Jack," she repeated pleadingly, not letting go of his hand. "Let's talk at home. Please." "Home?" he chuckled bitterly. "We don't have a home anymore, Emma. It was destroyed by you. And by him." He glanced at Richard again. The lover gathered his courage and said, "Please, calm down. I understand you're furious, but let's break up now. You can discuss everything later." "Shut up," Jack stepped forward, but Emma placed her chest between the men, pressing her hands against his chest. "Enough," she cried through her tears. "Enough." Jack froze. He had never heard his wife scream in such a voice. For several long seconds, no one spoke. Only Jack's heavy breathing and the distant noise of the highway broke the silence. Finally, he took a step back. "You." He looked at his wife with such pain that she lowered her eyes. "How could you, Emma? Our marriage, our children. You destroyed our family for him." Emma subbed. "It's not for. Jack, I didn't mean to." "You didn't want to." Jack laughed bitterly. "You accidentally ended up in his arms." She covered her face with her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. "This is a mistake." "Mistake?" He clenched his fists, trying to control himself and not to start shouting again. "Cheating is not a typo in the text, Emma. It's a conscious choice. You chose to cheat on me." Richard quietly intervened. "Jack, maybe that's enough for today. Emma is not feeling well right now. Let her come to her senses." Jack threw him a look so full of contempt that Richard fell silent. "It's not for you to tell me what to do," Jack said coldly. He turned to his wife again. "Just tell me one thing. Was this the first time, or have you been deceiving me for a long time?" Amash dropped her hands, looked at her husband with reddened eyes, and did not answer. The silence made everything clear. Jack nodded, feeling a new wave of pain rise in his chest. It's clear. Jack, she whispered. He raised his hand, stopping further words. I need to get out of here, he said hoarsely, feeling like he was about to choke. Don't you dare come home today. Stay wherever you want, even with him. Amash began to sob louder. Please don't say that. Jack turned away, not wanting to see her tears or her lover's pale face any more. He walked quickly to his car. Jack, he heard Emma's desperate cry behind him, but he didn't turn around. Getting into the car, he slammed his palm hard on the steering wheel, feeling his whole body tremble. His face was burning, and the fist he had hit Richard with ached with pain, but the pain in his soul was 100 times stronger. Jack pulled out of the parking lot, pressing the gas as if trying to escape from what had happened. Everything inside him was screaming. He had no idea where he was going. It seemed like the car was speeding through the streets on its own, while his mind was torn apart by thoughts. Why? Why did she do this? What will happen now? Finally, he came to his senses a little, slowed down, and realized that he had automatically driven to the embankment, where he and his family sometimes went for walks. Jack parked near a deserted beach. Twilight enveloped the shore. He got out of the car and stepped toward the water. His legs felt like cotton wool. His heart was pounding so hard that it was causing pain in his chest. And there, under the cover of the approaching night, Jack couldn't take it anymore. He covered his face with his hands and burst into tears. Never in his adult life had he cried like that, sobbing like a child. His world had collapsed. His trust had been trampled. His family was on the verge of falling apart. Everything that was dear to him was at risk because of the betrayal of a loved one. Emma sat in her car parked at the side of the road and couldn't stop shaking. After Jack drove away, she couldn't move from the parking lot for several minutes. Richard tried to calm her down. Emma, let's talk. You can't be alone now. But she angrily pushed away his attempt to hug. Don't touch me, she cried through her tears. It's because of you that all this happened. Richard frowned. Wait, what does this have to do with? I didn't want him to find out like this. What did you want? Emma sobbed. For me to continue living a lie? For me to deceive my children, my husband? God, what have I done? She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Richard touched her elbow. Emma, listen. I know you feel bad right now, but we'll get through this. You don't love him anymore, do you? Amash lowered her hands and looked at Richard with eyes reddened from tears. You don't understand anything. This is my husband, my family. I lost them all because of this. Wait, Richard tried to take her hand, but she pulled it away. You said you weren't happy with Jack. I was a fool, she cried desperately. A stupid, blind fool. Jack is a wonderful man. He is the father of my children, and I ruined everything. Richard pursed his lips. That is, do you regret it? Of course I do. Emma looked at him with grief. It was a mistake. Everything was a mistake. She slammed her bag shut, feverishly trying to figure out where to go now. She couldn't go home, Jack wouldn't let her in, and she wouldn't dare. To the children, Laura, Jack's sister, had probably already taken them. Richard, meanwhile, tried again. Emma, let's go to my place. You need to calm down now. Drink some water at my place. We'll talk. No, she snapped. It's over between us, Richard. Do you hear that? He turned pale. What? I won't be with you. I can't. I love my family, even if it's destroyed now. Emma shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. And for you, I have nothing but bitter regret. Go away. Richard took a few seconds to process what he had heard, then frowned. I see. So after everything, you're just throwing me away. Emma closed her eyes tiredly. Sorry, but we really have nothing more to talk about. Please go away. Richard got angry. You know, Emma, I also put a lot on the line for you. At the very least, I would have lost my job if the boss had found out. I'm sorry, she repeated. I'm so sorry. You're a good person. It's just, it shouldn't have happened. Richard shook his head, smiling bitterly. Amazing. Well then, goodbye. He turned around and walked quickly towards his car. Emma sat motionless, hearing the doors slam and the motor take her failed, new happiness away. Happiness. What a miserable delusion. Instead of happiness, she received a broken life. After a few minutes, she managed to pull herself together enough to move. She knew she would have to stop somewhere before morning. The thought of her friend Megan came to mind. Megan had been her best friend since high school. It was her name that Emma had used in her latest lies to her husband, that she was dating her friends. In reality, Megan knew nothing about this adventure. How could she look her in the eye now? But there was no choice. Megan lived alone in a small apartment on the other side of town. Emma dialed the number on the way, and her friend, hearing sobs on the other end of the line, immediately told her to come. When Emma rushed to Megan's door, she was already waiting on the threshold, worried. As soon as Emma crossed the threshold, she burst into tears on her shoulder, blurting out a confused confession. Meg, I ruined everything. I cheated on Jack. He found out. He left me. It's over. Megan was stunned by this news, but quickly pulled herself together, led her friend into the living room, and sat her down on the sofa. For about 10 minutes, Emma just cried, and Megan silently stroked her back. Finally, when the sobbing had died down a little, her friend quietly but seriously asked, "Tell me everything in order." Trembling, Emma told her how she had gotten involved in an affair with Richard a few months ago, how she had lied to her husband about work and meeting with friends, and how today it had all come to light in the most terrible way. Megan listened with growing amazement and reproach. "Emma, how could you? I couldn't even imagine. God, like Jack?" At the mention of her husband's name, Emma began to cry again. He, he hates me. He left. He told me not to dare come home." Megan shook her head. "Well, that's not surprising. Honestly, my friend, I don't know what came over you." Megan's voice was tinged with anger and pity. Emma buried her face in her trembling palms. "I don't know. I thought I was unhappy, that I fell in love with someone else. But it turned out I just went crazy." "You don't say," Megan sighed. "Was Jack really that bad?" "No." Emma looked at her with reddened eyes. "He's wonderful." He was. "So, the whole problem is in you," my friend stated mercilessly. "Well, you reap what you sow." Emma cried again. "I'd give everything just to get it all back. I love them, and I love Jack. I just realized it too late." Megan softened and hugged her friend. "Okay, that's enough. Listen, you need to pull yourself together now. You need to try to fix at least something." "How?" Emma groaned. "Well, for starters, don't give up. Sorry to say this, but now you're going to fight for your family if you care about them." Emma pressed her hand to her chest. "I'll do anything, anything." Megan nodded. "Then calm down. In the morning, you will think about how to apologize and what to say. In the meantime, I will put you to bed. Do you want a bath? Some tea?" Emma shook her head. "I don't want anything. I just want this to be a bad dream." Megan looked sadly at her friend. "It's a pity, but this is reality, and you need to go through it." Emma wiped away her tears and tried to straighten up. "You're right. Thank you for taking me in. Forgive me." "What are you apologizing for, silly girl?" Megan sighed. "I'm angry at you, of course, but you're my friend. I won't abandon you." Amash nodded gratefully and began to cry on her shoulder again. That night, Emma barely slept. The image of Jack's face twisted in pain, Emma's sobs, Jack's angry voice kept running through her head. By morning, she was exhausted and had made a firm decision. No matter what happened, she had to try to get her family back. Even if Jack didn't forgive her, she would beg, plead, do everything she could to earn her children's forgiveness and at least a shadow of her husband's respect. With these thoughts, Emma greeted the dawn, praying that the coming day would give her a chance. Jack didn't remember how much time he spent on the deserted night beach, looking at the black expanse of water. He sat on the cold sand, clutching his head in his hands, and wheezed quietly, having cried out all his tears. At some point, he felt someone's hand on his shoulder and shuddered. In front of him stood David, his best friend. "Shit, Jack." David said quietly, crouching down next to him. Laura called and said something happened to you. I was looking for you. Jack vaguely remembered. His sister must have been worried when he didn't call about the children. He didn't answer his calls, and Laura got David to his feet. Sorry, Jack croaked. His voice was hoarse. Everything inside him was burned out. I didn't hear the calls. David shook his head. It's okay. I'm glad I found you. Let's go. It's cold here. He helped Jack up. He was staggering as if he was drunk, although he hadn't drunk a drop of alcohol. His legs were acting up. David walked him to the car and sat him in the passenger seat. He got behind the wheel. Where are we going? He asked softly. Do you want to go home to you? Jack shook his head vigorously. No, not home. I don't want to see everything there reminds me of. The voice broke again. David nodded understandingly. Then come to me. I have a mess, but you can bear it. Jack nodded silently in gratitude. He couldn't be at home now, where every corner was filled with memories of a happy family that turned out to be a lie. David lived alone in a small apartment on the outskirts. On the way, the friends barely spoke. Jack sat staring at one point, and David, apparently, did not want to press questions ahead of time. It was only when they reached the apartment and David sat Jack down on the worn leather sofa in the living room, placing a mug of hot tea in front of him, that Jack croaked. She cheated on me, Dave. Saying it out loud seemed to confirm the reality of what had happened. His chest tightened again. David sat down next to him and sighed heavily. Crap. Caught them. Together, Jack continued with difficulty. Kissing some. Richard from her office, to be exact. Fuck. The friend exhaled, clenching his fists. What a bitch. Jack kept silent, his head down. It was not worth insulting Emma in front of him. David understood this and fell silent. Only his jaw was shaking with anger for his friend. How? Long ago? David asked cautiously after a pause. I don't know. Jack ran his hands over his face. Apparently, for some time now, she's been acting weird lately, and like an idiot, I hoped I was wrong. Of course. I hit that guy, Jack said dully. I don't know what would have happened if Emma hadn't stopped me. He did the right thing, David muttered. The bastard deserved it. It's no use. Jack closed his eyes, remembering the humiliating scene. God, Dave, it hurts so much. The voice wavered again. David put his arm around his shoulders. I know, brother, I know. I've been through this myself, remember? His friend reminded him quietly. Jack nodded. Several years ago, David divorced his wife. Though there was no cheating, they just didn't get along. Then Jack supported his friend, pulled him out of depression. Now it's the other way around. You endured, and I will endure, Jack said quietly. David squeezed his shoulder approvingly. This is the right attitude. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Jack stared into his cooling tea. Finally, he asked quietly, Why? Why did she do it? I don't know, Jack, David sighed. Nobody knows what's going on in someone else's head. I tried to be a good husband. We lived together for so many years. Children. You were a great husband and father, the friend said firmly. Don't blame yourself. Maybe I missed something. Jack raised his reddened eyes to David. Maybe I didn't pay enough attention. Maybe I wasn't good enough for her. Stop it. The friend shook his head. You're a reasonable man. You didn't drink. You didn't hit. You worked. You provided for the house. You loved her. Everyone saw that. And if she suddenly lacked something, you should have told her and not jumped on other people's beds. Jack's lips twitched in a bitter smile. Yes, probably. Exactly. David looked at him sharply. Don't you dare blame yourself for her choice. She's the one who screwed up, not you. Jack nodded, trying to accept these words. Deep down inside, self-flagellation was still stirring. What if it were true, if he worked less or was more romantic? But David didn't leave his friend a chance to delve into these thoughts. Listen, we need to decide what to do next. You have children. Emma, where is she now? I have no idea, Jack frowned. I told her not to come home. Probably at his place or at a friend's place somewhere. I see. Well, that's right. David stood up, walked around the room, then returned. It may be too early to say right away, but you need to think about divorce. The word divorce struck a chill in his heart. Even though Jack had been thinking about it since the moment he saw the betrayal, when spoken out loud, it sounded terrible. Divorce, he exhaled. What, should we put up with this any longer? David spread his hands. You love her, I understand, but she betrayed you. Either live in constant mistrust or break up. I can't think straight right now, Jack admitted, rubbing his temples. His head felt like it was in a vice. Everything is so fresh. It hurts. Of course, David said more gently. Sorry for bringing it up. Just keep in mind, legal issues are best resolved when your head is more or less cool, but we can't drag it out either. Jack nodded. He knew his friend was right. The thought of divorce was terrifying. He had never imagined himself in that role, but it looked like he would have to. You can stay with me as long as you need, David added. There's a guest room, you know that. Thanks, Jack replied gratefully. Maybe for a couple of nights. I don't want to see her now. Live as long as you need, his friend slapped him on the shoulder. One more face, one less, it's all the same to me. But at least you won't be alone. Jack managed to smile slightly at this rough concern. Thanks, Dave. What are we doing drinking tea and tea? David suddenly stood up and headed to the kitchen cabinet, taking out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. I think the situation requires a serious conversation with Mr. Jack Daniels. I'm not sure it's worth it, Jack rubbed his face tiredly. He wanted to forget, but alcohol was a bad advisor. A little won't hurt, David insisted, splashing a couple of fingers of the amber liquid into each glass. To the repose of the departed tranquility. He held out 1 glass to Jack. He hesitated at first, but then took it. They clinked glasses. Well, be it, David grinned wryly. Be well, brother. Jack took a small sip. The burning liquid burned his throat, but he didn't wince. The internal pain was still stronger. You know, David began quietly after a pause. You feel like your life is over, but it's not. Jack smiled bitterly. It's not over. My family fell apart. Family is not only her, the friend objected. You have children. Think about them first and foremost now. They need their father alive and well. Jack thought. Children. His heart sank at the thought of how this would affect them. He loved his son and daughter more than life itself, and did not want them to suffer because of their mother's actions. How can I tell them? He asked quietly. How can I explain? Nobody can tell you that, David shook his head. Only you and Emma will decide for yourselves. But I don't think we should go into details. Just say that Mom and Dad can't be together anymore. Children aren't stupid. They'll figure it out themselves in time. Jack ran his hand through his hair. Jack, I think, already guesses. He felt something too. He saw how we were drifting apart. And Emma, she's 10. She won't understand why. His voice wavered again. He imagined his daughter's face, full of pain and tears, when she finds out that her mom and dad are getting divorced. It will be hard for her, David said softly, but it will be worse if you live in lies and scandals. Jack remained silent. The friend turned out to be right. There was no point in pretending to be a happy family for the sake of the children. They would sense the falsehood anyway. It's hard for you, David said, but you'll get through it. Not right away, not tomorrow, but it will get easier with time. In the meantime, hold on for your son and daughter. They need a strong father right now who won't break. I'll try, Jack nodded. He finished his whiskey and put the glass on the table. Thanks for getting me out of there. That's what friends are for, David answered quietly. They talked for several more hours. David distracted his friend as best he could. For example, he reminded Jack of how they had ruined a college graduation party by bringing 3 pet pigs with the numbers 1, 2, and 4 inches on their backs into the hall, Then the entire administration had spent the entire morning looking for the missing pig hash 3. Hearing about this old prank, Jack smiled weakly for the first time that evening. Sometimes David would get distracted by marriage topics, loudly cursing all the cheaters in a row like, "They've gotten into the habit of ruining families, bastards, no responsibility." Then, noticing that such aggression wasn't making his friend feel any better, he switched over and simply turned on an old action movie on TV to drown out the silence. Towards morning, Jack fell into a restless sleep on the guest sofa. David covered him with a blanket and left him to rest. A new, very difficult day lay ahead. In the morning, Jack woke up from the annoying ringing of the phone. His head ached, his mouth was dry. He did not immediately understand where he was, but seeing an unfamiliar ceiling and feeling the hard sofa under his back, he remembered he was at David's. The evening and night flashed in his memory as painful pictures, and his chest was again squeezed by melancholy. The phone kept ringing. Jack stood up with difficulty, answering the beckoning signal. It was his cell phone, lying in the pocket of his jeans, thrown on the floor. He pulled out the phone and saw the name on the screen, Emma. His heart twitched painfully. This was the third time his wife had called. He had slept through the previous calls. Jack didn't dare answer. But in the end, there was no point in disconnecting. Sooner or later the conversation would take place. He pressed the accept button. "Hello?" My voice broke, and I had to clear my throat. "Yes?" "Jack." Emma's voice was hoarse. She had obviously been crying. "Thank God." "Where are you?" "I'm worried." Jack clenched his jaw in indignation. "She's worried? After everything?" "It's none of your business," he snapped. There was silence on the line. Then she spoke pleadingly. "Please, let's meet and talk. I need to explain everything to you." "Explain?" Jack smiled bitterly. "What is there to explain, Emma? I saw it all with my own eyes." I know what it looks like," she said quickly. "But we need to talk. About us, about the children." Jack's expression darkened at the mention of children. As much as he wanted to erase Emma from his life, she was still the mother of his children. Issues needed to be addressed. "Okay," he exhaled. "I'll be home in an hour." "Okay, thank you," she muttered. He didn't listen and switched off. David, it turned out, was no longer asleep. Something was slamming in the kitchen, and it smelled of coffee. "You're early," the friend noted, seeing Jack at the kitchen threshold. "She called," Jack said briefly, leaning against the doorframe. "She wants to talk." David nodded understandingly. Well, it was bound to happen. "I'll go." Jack ran his hand over his face. "Thank you." "Are you sure you're ready?" David looked worried. "Maybe you should get ready first. At least eat and wash up." "I don't want to drag this out." Jack shook his head. "I want to finish this conversation." "Well, be firm, brother," the friend said seriously. "And remember, don't let her pull the wool over your eyes. Keep your head as cool as possible." Jack smiled weakly. "I'll try. I'll be with you if anything," David suddenly suggested. "I can come and support you." "No," Jack waved his hand. "Thanks, but I'll do it myself. It's between me and her." "I understand," David clapped him on the shoulder. "Good luck. Call me if anything happens." Jack briefly hugged his friend and, having collected his things, went home. As he approached the house, he noticed Emma's car parked at the curb. She had been waiting then. Jack turned off the engine and sat for a few seconds, gathering his courage. His soul was heavy, but the night spent at his friend's had helped to pour out the first sharp pain. Now he felt a mournful determination. Emma was waiting for him in the living room. She looked terrible, pale, her eyes puffy from crying, her hair pulled back carelessly into a ponytail. She was wearing jeans and an old, stretched-out sweatshirt. Apparently, she had traveled without preparation. Jack couldn't help but remember how radiant and happy Emma had been on their wedding day, in a snow-white dress with her eyes burning with love. Then she had seemed to him the embodiment of happiness itself, and now the same woman was standing before him, broken and frightened. The contrast made his heart ache even more. Jack stopped a few steps away. They looked at each other in silence for a few moments. Emma was the first to break the silence. "Thank you for coming." Jack pressed his lips into a straight line. "Say what you want." Amash winced at his cold tone. She clasped her hands, clearly not knowing where to begin. "Jack," she began quietly, I want to say that I'm so sorry. There are no words to express how sorry I am for what I did." He was silent, looking at her intently. Emma swallowed nervously and continued. It, it was all a terrible mistake. Terrible. I don't know what came over me, honestly. Her voice wavered. She covered her face with her hands, trying to pull herself together. "A mistake, you say?" Jack said dully. "How long did your mistake last? A month? A year?" Amash lowered her hands and looked at him imploringly. "Several months. 4 months." Jack smiled wryly. "A bit of a long time for a mistake, don't you think?" She blushed with shame. I know. I know. I have no excuse." Jack felt a flash of anger. "Then why? Why did you do it? What were you missing?" Emma swallowed. For a moment, a hint of stubbornness flashed in her gaze. I, I've been suffering from a feeling of emptiness, Jack. For the last year or two. It's like you and I have become just neighbors in the same house. You're always at work, tired at home. We're no longer close. And that's why you had to go sleep with a colleague," he spat. Amash closed her eyes and 2 large tears rolled down her cheeks. "I know, it sounds disgusting. But with Richard. He listened to me, was interested in me. I felt again that I was needed by someone, desired." "I didn't make you desirable?" Jack raised his voice, not believing his ears. "I dedicated my whole life to our family, worked like an ox, so that you would not want for anything." "Yes, you worked," she whispered, "and I appreciate it. But you almost stopped noticing me as a woman. You never once said that I was beautiful. You were not interested in my affairs." Jack was shocked into silence. Could she really blame him? "We could have talked about it," he said more calmly, containing his anger. "We could have gone to a psychologist, spent time together. But you chose the easiest way to find comfort in the arms of another." Emma subbed. "I guess I wanted to shake things up. I thought it was just flirting and wouldn't end in anything serious. But it's over," he concluded coldly. She covered her face with her hands. Yes, everything got out of control. There was a painful pause. Finally, Jack asked the question that was burning inside. "Do you love him?" Emma shook her head, lowering her hands. "No, I don't know myself. It seemed to me. At some point, I confused infatuation with love. He was so attentive, romantic. But now," she hesitated and whispered, "No, I don't love. It was an illusion." "So you risked your family for an illusion?" Jack shook his head bitterly. "Bravo." "I'm sorry," she whispered, looking down at the floor. "If I could take it all back." "But you can't," he snapped. "Everything happened." She looked up again, her eyes sparkling with tears. "Jack, I know I'm guilty before you and the children. But please don't destroy the family completely. Give me a chance to fix everything." "Fix it." He laughed bitterly. "How will you fix it, Emma? Will you turn back time? Or pretend it never happened?" "I'm ready to do anything to make you forgive me," she said passionately. "I broke up with Richard, I swear. As soon as you caught us, I stopped everything." Jack grimaced. "You really tore it up just after you got caught?" Emma cried. Yes, yes, I'm a wretch. I'm a lousy wife. But I love you. I've always loved you. It was a blur. A stupid romance that means nothing compared to our life together." Jack felt himself torn apart by contradictions. Of course, part of him still loved this woman, the one he had known before. But another part of him remembered her with disgust. "Do you think I can forget?" he asked quietly. "Can I trust you again?" Amash stepped closer, trying to take his hand, but Jack pulled away. I hope in time I will prove to you that I am worthy of your trust," she sobbed. "Prove it," he shook his head. "How? Will you report on every step?" Trust is either there or it isn't, and I don't have it in you anymore." The last words came with bitterness. Emma cried, swallowing her tears. "Please, at least for the sake of the children. They won't survive the divorce." "You shouldn't hide behind the children," Jack cut her off sharply. "Do you think it's better for them to watch their parents suffer?" "No," she sobbed, "but if you forgive me, we can fix everything. We'll work on our relationship. We'll go to a family psychologist." Jack had closed his eyes, feeling tired. He hadn't expected her to beg so desperately. It seemed to him that after what had happened, everything was obvious, and she, it turns out, wants to save the marriage. "I don't know, Emma," he said, exhaling. "I don't know if I can do it. I'm not ready to promise anything yet." She clung to the slightest hope. "So, you're not leaving. You'll give me a chance." "I said I don't know," he repeated firmly. "I can't live under the same roof with you at the moment." Emma nodded slowly, expecting the worst. "So," Jack continued, "I think it's best for you to move out for now." These words seemed to hit her. She pressed her hand to her mouth, holding back another sob, and only after a second did she quietly ask, "Where do you want me to go?" "I don't know," Jack shrugged. "You could go to a friend's, rent a place. There are many options. I'm not throwing you out on the street, but we need to live separately. For me, so I can think it over. For you, so to understand what I've done," she finished bitterly. "Yes," Jack looked away. "Besides, the kids are with Laura now. We need to figure out what to tell them when they get back." Emma wiped her wet cheeks with her sleeve. Maybe we shouldn't do it for now. Let's try to pretend that everything is fine, but then—" "No," he answered firmly. "I won't lie to the children. They'll have to know the truth, at least partially, that we're temporarily separating." Amash began to breathe convulsively. "They will ask why." Jack looked gloomily into her eyes. "So think about what you'll tell them. I don't think you should tell the whole truth. I don't want them to hate you." Emma covered her face with her hands in shame. Jack continued, "Let's say that Mom and Dad are having problems, and we're taking a break. Without the word divorce, for now." He himself was not yet ready to say this in front of the children. "Okay," she responded bluntly. "Jack, can I at least see them sometimes?" "Of course," he said angrily. "You're still their mother. But explain to them yourself why Mom isn't home now." These words stung Emma, and she began to cry again. "I have nothing to justify myself to them with." "It's not for me to teach you," he shrugged, although it was bitter for him to see her so broken. "Think of it." And after a few moments, she simply stood there, choking back tears. Finally, she quietly said, "Okay, I'll pack my things and leave." Jack nodded. He felt empty. It seemed like another conversation had come to an end, and it hadn't become any clearer, only more painful. Before leaving to pack her suitcase, Emma walked up to the living room door and stopped. "Jack." He looked up automatically. "Thank you for listening," she said barely audibly. "And I love you, no matter what." Jack clenched his fists, holding back his emotions. "If you really loved me, this wouldn't have happened." She closed her eyes, nodded, and walked out, closing the door behind her. Jack sank down onto the sofa and ran his hands over his face. The sound of a motor running outside the window was heard. Emma was leaving. Jack did not get up to see her off. He heard the front door slam and the footsteps fade away. That was it. She was gone. A few minutes later, Jack went upstairs, not quite understanding why. In the bedroom, his eye was drawn to the half-empty wardrobe. Emma had managed to put only some of her things in a suitcase. The rest was left hanging forlornly. On the dressing table lay a forgotten bottle of her favorite perfume. Jack took it, mechanically inhaling the familiar sweet aroma. His heart sank. Just yesterday, this smell had been associated with home comfort, and now only with pain. He abruptly put the bottle back. He barely closed his eyes all night, moving from room to room. Emma's presence seemed to be in every detail of the interior, a family photo on the shelf, her mug in the kitchen. Only in the morning, exhausted by heavy thoughts, Jack fell into a restless sleep on the sofa in the living room. The next day, Sunday, came the difficult moment. It was necessary to tell the children about the changes in the family. Laura was supposed to bring Jack and Emma after lunch. Jack agreed with Emma that they would talk to the children together, no matter how painful it was. Emma temporarily moved in with her friend Megan. Fortunately, she offered to help. Today, she arrived at the house a little earlier than the children. Jack let her in, trying not to meet her eyes. They hardly spoke, only exchanging a few words about what and how to say to their son and daughter. The first few days after Emma left were especially hard on Jack. He had to relearn everyday things that used to happen by themselves. The morning after that terrible night, he woke up to the alarm and realized that he was now the only one responsible for getting the kids ready for school. Jack frantically made breakfast while simultaneously trying to braid Emma's hair and checking that Jack had put all of his books away. As a result, the braid came out crooked and the toast almost burned. However, to his relief, the children did not act up. Jack silently helped his sister with her hair. Emma spread peanut butter on her own bread. They were trying to show that they could handle it and that Dad could handle it too. This touched Jack deeply. He still had a lot to learn, but together they would get through this. That same evening, Jack's mother called. Laura had already told her in general terms what had happened, and Mrs. Williams wanted to hear her son in person. Jack, although he was afraid of moral lectures, nevertheless answered. He heard his mother's worried voice. "Son, what happened to you? Laura says Emma left. Is that true?" Jack pinched the bridge of his nose and wearily confirmed. "It's true, Mom. We have big problems. We decided to live separately." There was a painful silence on the other end of the line. Then the mother asked quietly, "Did she cheat on you?" Jack winced at the directness of the question, but answered just as directly. "Yes." Mom sighed sadly. "Oh my God, and what now? Will you get divorced?" There was a hint of hope in her voice for a negative answer. Jack felt a twinge of regret. Emma had been loved by her parents, considered a daughter. The destruction of the family was hitting them too. "Probably," he said, brutally honest. "I couldn't live with it." "Jack," the mother's voice trembled, "maybe you could try to forgive me, for the sake of the children, for the sake of—" "Mom," he interrupted softly but firmly, "I know you mean well, but believe me, I've tried to think about it. It won't work. I don't know her anymore, and I don't want to know her." The mother was silent for a moment, and then said with pain, "I'm so sorry. Emma always made such a good impression. I thought you were happy." "I thought so too," Jack smiled bitterly, "but apparently we were wrong." There were sobs on the other end of the line. His mother was crying. Jack felt uneasy. He was almost not ashamed of his own tears, but it was hard to hear his mother's tears. "Mom, that's enough," he said quietly. "Everything will be fine. I can handle it." "Yes, son, of course. Just hold on," she said. "If you need help with the kids, you know, Dad and I always—" "I know," Jack smiled out of the corner of his mouth, imagining his father listening sullenly to the conversation on the other device. "Thanks. We're coping for now." "I hug you, my dear," Mom sighed as she said goodbye. "Take care of yourself." "And you and Dad, too," Jack replied. He hung up with a heavy heart. It was perhaps the hardest call he had ever made, as if he were officially admitting to his parents that his marriage was over. But there was nothing he could do about it. This was the new reality. The next couple of months were a busy and rebuilding experience for Jack. He was getting used to being a single father half the time. The kids lived with him on weekdays, went to their mother on weekends, and then vice versa, by mutual agreement. The first time Jack sent the kids to Emma for the weekend, he was incredibly nervous. He felt uneasy about being alone in the empty house, and he was worried about how they would spend the night without him. However, everything went smoothly. Emma happily ran around her mother's apartment, and Jack spent most of the time in his room with headphones, as Emma later said. It was a new experience for the kids, too, but they coped. and Jack spent that first lonely Saturday spring cleaning the house, trying not to think too much. At first, Jack could barely concentrate on work. His superiors, having learned of his family problems, gave him a couple of days off, and his colleagues were understanding. Gradually, gathering his will into a fist, Jack got back into business. The paperwork for the divorce was also moving toward completion. Emma had agreed to all the terms that Jack's lawyer had drawn up. She had given up her claim to the house, asking only for a small cash settlement for her share, so that she could then make a down payment on the apartment she was planning to buy. She categorically refused to pay child support for herself, saying that she would not accept a cent saturated with his hatred. Jack did not object. He paid only the legally required child support, and even then he had opened a separate account for the children, to which Emma also had access. The day of the official divorce arrived. The small family courtroom was filled with other people's dramas. While Jack sat in the hallway waiting, several married couples walked past him, accompanied by lawyers. Some had angry faces, others were tear-stained. How many families are falling apart today besides ours, he thought bitterly. Finally, their names were listed on the docket. Jack nervously straightened his tie and walked into the courtroom with his lawyer. The courtroom was empty except for him and Emma and their lawyers. The trial was formally simplified by mutual consent without showdowns. Jack stole a glance at Emma. His ex-wife was sitting opposite him, her eyes downcast. She looked tired and confused. Pity stirred in Jack's soul, but he immediately suppressed the softness in himself. Now was not the time or place for sentimentality. The judge, an elderly woman with an attentive but tired look, quickly read their agreement and asked a couple of questions for the form. The night before the trial, Jack had been unable to sleep for a long time. Around midnight, a message from Emma arrived on his phone. It was a letter she asked him to read. Jack's heart sank. At first he considered deleting it without reading it, but then he changed his mind. Too much had to end tomorrow. He opened the letter and began to read with trembling hands. Dear Jack, I know you don't want to hear anything from me, but before we officially divorce, I have to say the most important thing. Forgive me. Forgive me for all the pain I caused you. If I could turn back time, I would do it without thinking. I ruined the most precious thing I had in my life, our family. I cannot and will not be forgiven, but I want you to know, despite everything, you were and remain the closest person to me. You are a wonderful father to our children and were the best husband anyone could dream of. I'm not asking you to take me back or forget everything. That would be stupid. I deserve your anger. I just want you to be able to not hold a grudge in your heart one day, for yourself and our guys. I regret every step I took that led to our breakup, and I will regret it until the end of my days. Thank you for the years of happiness that we lived together. Take care of yourself, please. You are a wonderful person and deserve to be happy. I hope that someday the pain will subside and you will remember me without hatred, with love and eternal guilt. Your Emma. Jack finished reading the letter. His hands were shaking. A storm of contradictions arose in his soul: rage, pity, and melancholy. He closed his eyes, trying to calm down. No matter what, tomorrow it will all end. He decided that he would not write a reply. There was nothing left to say. Perhaps someday, years later, he would be able to forgive. But for now, he needed to survive the coming day. The next day, the judge signed some paper and said, looking at them over her glasses, in accordance with the laws of the state, the marriage between Jack T. Williams and Emma L. Williams is dissolved. You are now officially divorced. Good luck. A blow of the hammer and the job is done. Jack suddenly saw a different room, the small room where he and Emma had exchanged vows of fidelity. He heard her whisper happily, I promise to love you for better or for worse, until death do us part. Those words had seemed like an unshakable truth then. Now the judge had officially separated them, despite all their vows of the past. A lump formed in Jack's throat, but he only clenched his teeth tighter. Amash closed her eyes convulsively, tears welling up. Her lawyer put his arm around her shoulders and said something quietly. Jack sat as if petrified. He expected to feel bitterness, relief, or something, but there was no feeling, as if he had frozen inside so as not to fall apart. "Jack, let's go." Lawyer Mark touched him on the elbow. He stood up. He still had to sign the papers with the secretary. As if in a fog, Jack signed, received a certified copy of the divorce certificate. The procedure was over. In the courtroom corridor, he and Emma ran into each other again. Both froze, unsure of what to say. The lawyers tactfully stepped aside. Emma was the first to try to speak. "Well, that's all." Jack nodded. Yes. He noticed that she was missing her wedding ring. He had taken his off the day of the breakup, so his finger was no longer used to it. "Thank you," Emma said suddenly, her voice shaking, "for not turning this into a war." Jack sighed. There was enough war as it was. Amash nodded, looking down. She took a deep breath. "I promise I'll be a good mother to our children. I'll try to earn their forgiveness." "They love you," Jack replied dully. "They just need time." "And you?" she blurted out suddenly. She immediately shook her head. "Sorry, don't answer. It doesn't matter." He was silent. To say that he forgave, that would be untrue, and she seemed to understand. Instead of answering, Jack extended his hand to her. "Good luck, Emma." She looked at his palm in shock, then timidly shook it. "And you too," she whispered. Her hand was cold and trembling slightly. Jack remembered for a moment how they had held hands tightly in times of joy and sorrow. Now it was all reduced to this short, formal handshake. They let go of their hands. Emma seemed to want to say or do something else, but she did not dare. There was sadness in her eyes. Jack simply nodded goodbye to her and turned to leave with his lawyer. Outside, the sun shone brightly, despite his mood. Jack paused on the courthouse steps, lifting his face to the warm rays. Freedom? Was it so sweet, this newfound freedom? Mark, the lawyer, patted him on the shoulder. "Congratulations, Jack. Everything went smoothly." "Yes, thank you," he responded absent-mindedly. "If you need anything, please contact me." Mark extended his hand. "I really hope I won't need it again for such matters." "Let's hope so." Jack shook the lawyer's hand and tried to smile. "Thanks for everything." The lawyer left, leaving him alone in the sun-drenched square. Jack looked at the copy of the divorce certificate in his hand. Strict lines, a seal, marriage dissolved. In black and white, he put the paper away in a folder. A strange feeling suddenly rose in his chest, either relief or bitterness, more like a mixture. On the one hand, the final point had been made, he could stop rushing about. On the other hand, this was the funeral of a large part of his life. A gust of spring wind ruffled his hair. Jack took out his phone. He promised the kids he would let them know right away how it would go. He wrote to Jack, "It's all over. How are you?" The answer came almost immediately. "Okay, Em is fine, watching cartoons." Jack smiled sadly. Jack tried to seem grown up, supported his little sister. "I'll be there soon," he answered his son. Putting the phone away, Jack quietly said to himself, "Well, go ahead, Jack. Let's move on with our lives." And feeling the weight of his soul gradually lift, he headed for the car. A new life awaited him ahead, with its difficulties, joys, and hopes. The main thing was that his children would be nearby, and he would be able to survive the rest. Despite the divorce process, Jack still felt unresolved contradictions inside. He had done everything logically, separated from his wife, hired a lawyer, and took care of the children. But the mental pain did not subside. At night, he tossed and turned in his empty marital bed, mentally replaying scenes of past happiness and recent nightmare. One evening, after a particularly tough day, Jack received a text from Emma. They hadn't communicated much in person in recent days, except about the kids. But this was personal. "Jack, sorry to bother you. I found out the contact details of a good family psychologist. Maybe we should go. Maybe it will help us figure things out. Even if you've decided to get a divorce, it will at least help close the gestalt, as they say. Please." Jack stared at the screen for a long time. Part of him wanted to erase it right away and not answer why a psychologist now that it was all over. But the other part, maybe it really was worth trying, at least for his own peace of mind. He remembered the lawyer's advice about helping children and wondered, maybe he and Emma needed help too, to end their relationship in a civilized manner or to understand if there was a chance. In the end, he answered briefly, "Okay, let's try. When?" A week later, they walked into the family psychologist's office together. The doctor was an elderly woman, Mrs. Allison, with a soft voice and a penetrating gaze. Jack felt awkward, sitting next to Emma on a cozy sofa like they used to sit at the movies, but now there was an abyss between them. "What brings you to me?" Mrs. Allison asked softly. Jack remained silent, letting Emma speak. After all, it was her initiative. Amash spoke quietly. "We're on the verge of divorce because of my betrayal." She spoke the word with difficulty, looking down. The psychologist nodded. "I understand. Would you like to try to restore the relationship or sort out your feelings?" Imash looked at her husband with hope. "I would like to restore it, but I don't know if Jack wants to." Jack felt the psychologist's attention on him and cleared his throat. "Honestly, I don't believe that recovery is possible. I came rather, well, to figure things out, to understand whether I can forgive at least somehow, at least for the sake of normal communication in the future." "That's quite a lot," Mrs. Allison said. "Infidelity is one of the most severe traumas in marriage. Your mistrust, your pain, are a completely normal reaction." Jack nodded, feeling his insides tighten at the words. Trauma was the right word. "Emma," the psychologist turned to his wife, "what would you like to say to Jack now, in the presence of a neutral person?" Amash wiped her eyes with a handkerchief and turned to her husband. "It's my fault. I'm ashamed and hurt by what I did to you. You didn't deserve it. I love you, I really do." Her voice broke. "I lost my head. I didn't appreciate what I had. Forgive me." She burst into tears. Jack was silent, looking away. Hearing her sobs was excruciating because part of him wanted to comfort her. It was a habit. But he held on. The psychologist gently suggested, "Jack, can you respond to these words? What do you feel?" He sighed heavily. "What do I feel? Pain, anger, disappointment." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "It hurts me too, Emma. You destroyed my trust in you. I keep asking, why? What did I do to deserve this?" Emma subbed, "You didn't deserve anything. It's my fault. Something inside me broke." The psychologist raised her hand. "Let's not fall into self-flagellation. It's better to understand the reasons. Emma, you say broken inside. What exactly did you feel before the affair began?" Emma tried to calm down. "I felt lonely, unwanted, as if Jack and I had grown distant. I lacked attention, warmth." She looked guiltily at her husband. "But I know I should have told him about it and not looked elsewhere." The psychologist turned to Jack. "Have you noticed that Emma lacks attention?" Jack shrugged, frowning. "She didn't say it directly. Yes, we spent less time together, but I have work, worries. I thought everything was fine with us. It's just that years of marriage, the passion has died down, but that's natural. I didn't think she was suffering so much." "Partners often fail to read each other's silent signals," Mrs. Allison noted. "Unfortunately, dissatisfaction builds up and results in a crisis." "Crisis is putting it mildly," Jack said dryly. The psychologist nodded. "I agree. Now the question is, do you both want to try to restore the relationship? This implies long-term work with a psychologist, mutual effort, patience." Amash nodded immediately. I'm ready for anything." Jack hesitated. He saw how hopefully his wife looked at him. Pictures flashed through his head. What if? Maybe it was true, after a couple of years of therapy, everything would get better, he would forgive, and the family would be together again. The children would be happy. But then he remembered Emma in the arms of another, remembered her lies, the children's tears. His heart turned to stone. "I don't believe I can," he said dully. I don't feel like I can love and trust her again right now." Emma covered her face with her hands. The psychologist asked softly, "You absolutely don't want to try, even for the sake of the children?" "Children." Jack winced. "Of course, they want us to be together. But do they really want a family where the father doesn't trust the mother and is constantly tormented by suspicions? That wouldn't be a family, just a semblance." "That's true," Emma quietly interjected through her tears. "I don't want Jack to live with me through force, torturing himself." Mrs. Allison spread her hands. "It's a difficult dilemma. You may be too emotionally wounded to make a decision about recovery. It takes time." "There's little time," Jack objected. "The divorce papers are being prepared." "You can slow down a divorce if you want to," the psychologist noted. Jack shook his head. "I don't want to give false hope." He turned to his wife and, choosing his words, quietly said, "Emma, I really appreciate that you're trying, but I'm not sure I'll ever forget. Every time I look at you, I see you with him." His voice broke suddenly, and he fell silent, gritting his teeth to keep the pain from showing. Emma suddenly carefully touched his hand for a second. "I'm so sorry. If only I could erase these memories from you." Jack pulled away, and she removed her hand, lowering her head. The psychologist paused, letting them calm down. Then she summed it up. "At this point, Jack, you are not ready to try to revive the marriage. This is your choice. Emma, you hear me. He cannot forgive yet. You must accept this, no matter how painful it is." Emma nodded, wiping away tears. "However," Mrs. Ellison continued, "I would advise you to work with a psychologist for some time, either together or separately, to cope with your emotions. Even if you get divorced, you will have to raise children together, communicate. It is very important to establish peaceful interactions." "That's true," Jack agreed quietly. "For the sake of the children, I'm willing to try to maintain a normal relationship with Emma." "Me too," Emma whispered. "This is where we can help," the psychologist smiled. "If you want, we can continue working in the direction of a peaceful separation and joint upbringing." Jack exchanged a glance with his wife. It sounded reasonable. "I don't think it will hurt," he said. "I agree," Emma added. "Excellent," Mrs. Ellison nodded. "Then let's focus on how you can accept the situation and interact for the sake of the children." For the rest of the session, they talked not about the past, but about the future. How to present the divorce to the children as gently as possible. How to resolve organizational issues peacefully. Emma barely cried, carefully writing down recommendations. Jack felt devastated, but perhaps a little better. He and Emma had agreed not to feud openly. At least it was better for everyone. On leaving the psychologist, they stopped at the porch. The sun was setting, turning red in the spring clouds. They stood in silence for a few minutes. "Thank you for agreeing to come," Emma said quietly. "Uh-huh," was all Jack replied. He had already trained himself to keep his distance, not to look at her for too long, so as not to feel again either love or hate, nothing superfluous. Emma asked timidly, "Can I at least ask you sometimes how you are doing? Or is it better not to bother you at all?" Jack shrugged. "Write about the children, about the schedule, about the rest. I don't know. For now, it's probably better to write less." "I understand," she nodded sadly. They said goodbye tensely and went to their cars. All the way home, Jack thought about what they had said at the psychologist's. That was it. He had finally admitted that he could not forgive. Deep down, he had decided this before, but now he said it out loud. Strangely, it made his heart feel a little lighter, as if he had let go of illusory hope and firmly chosen his path. That night, Jack slept soundly for the first time in a long time. He dreamed of children, laughing and calling him to play on the lawn. There was no room for Emma in the dream, no pain. Just him, Jack and Emma, together happy. When Jack woke up, he stared at the ceiling for a long time. He knew what he would live for these two, and the rest would follow. For the next couple of months after that psychological session, Jack moved forward without fear along the planned path. Life settled into a new format, and he looked back less and less. The children gradually got used to the fact that their parents lived separately. Jack still fulfilled his duties, drove, picked up, helped with homework. Emma tried not to miss school events, came to meetings, called the children every day. Over time, joint parenting became a routine. Jack was grateful that there were no wars or scandals. He did not interfere with Emma's communication with the children, and she did not interfere with him. Internally, he could not get rid of the bitterness for a long time, but for the sake of his son and daughter, he learned to behave tactfully. Looking back, Jack knew he had done the right thing. Yes, he had destroyed the marriage completely, but he couldn't have done otherwise. His emotional wounds were too deep to continue his family life with Emma as if nothing had happened. Finally, the day came when their divorce became official. 6 months after their separation, Jack received a divorce decree from the court. He did not attend the formal hearing, but their lawyers had completed the paperwork. Emma had signed the papers in advance. One quiet weekday, Jack walked out of the courthouse with the document in his hand, feeling that a long chapter of his life had ended. That evening, he and Emma took the kids to a pizza place together, the four of them, for a family dinner, divorced but still parents. It was a sign. The divorce was between them, but they would remain a united front with the kids. Jack had an idea what had happened today. He had learned from his father that it was officially over. He ate his pizza sullenly, but then he couldn't take it anymore and sat down next to his mother when she burst into tears looking at a family photo on her phone. Emma hugged her mother tightly, and Jack put his hand on his son's shoulder. And so they sat there, four people, still a family, albeit an incomplete one, comforting each other in silence. When the children fell asleep that evening, Jack felt for the first time that his resentment towards Emma had eased slightly. He could see how sincerely she was worried and how much the children loved her without a flash of anger. He had not forgiven her completely, but he did not want to carry hatred in his heart either. After all, she was the mother of his children and a part of his life. Almost a year had passed. Jack's life had taken a new turn. He had become accustomed to being a divorced father, had learned to run the household alone on the days when the children were with him, and to find something to do in the empty house when Emma had the children. The relationship with his ex-wife gradually stabilized at a level of even politeness. A few months after the divorce, the most acute emotions subsided, and they managed to establish communication on the phone and in meetings without tension. Not friends, of course, but not enemies either. Emma still felt guilty and tried to smooth things over. Jack appreciated that she did not create unnecessary problems. Everything for the sake of the children, that was their unspoken motto. Jack had matured even more during that year. He was 17 and actively preparing for college. After what had happened, his relationship with his mother remained cool. He communicated with her correctly, but without the previous closeness. Emma took it hard, but from time to time Jack noticed restrained progress. Jack could call her himself about something or even joke dryly in her presence. Jack did not put pressure on his son, allowing him to set his own boundaries. Emma, on the contrary, quickly forgave her mother, or rather, she never fully understood the scale of what had happened. She simply loved both parents and was glad that both were paying so much attention to her. The girl became stronger spiritually. After several sessions with a child psychologist, she stopped being afraid that the family would fall apart completely. She already knew that even though her mother and father did not live together, they would not abandon her. Jack devoted all his energy to the children. He did not miss a single school event, Jack's football games, Emma's concerts. He felt that over the past year he had become even closer to them, especially to his daughter. Emma used to take care of the girl more, and now many of mother's concerns fell on him. He learned to braid hair, to understand his school friends, and even helped Emma with creative crafts. His daughter was happy. Her dad had become so involved. Imash also tried not to be a stranger. She took the children on hikes, organized culinary evenings at her place. Emma loved to bake pies with her mother. Sometimes Jack and Emma even got together with the children, for example, for birthdays. The first such joint celebration was awkward, but bearable. They both took the children to an amusement park. and for the sake of their son and daughter's smiles, they were able to forget about the past for at least a day. Emma has also changed this year. She has lost a little weight, become quieter, more modest. She even changed her job just so that nothing would remind her of the fatal affair. She lives with a burden of guilt, but tries to be better for the sake of the children. Well, Jack respected at least this effort of hers. Today was a special day. Emma was giving her first big concert at the music school. The girl had been studying piano for several years, but for the first time she was supposed to play a solo on the stage of the House of Culture. Jack, of course, prepared. He bought flowers, arrived at the hall in advance, took seats in the front row for himself, Emma and Jack. Emma came up shortly before the concert began. She was visibly nervous, worried about her daughter. Jack nodded to her affably, and she smiled gratefully. Jack was sitting between his parents. He greeted his mother briefly and buried himself in his phone until the concert began. When Emma came out on stage in her elegant dress and began to play Bach's overture, her small fingers confidently ran over the keys, producing a strict melody. Jack couldn't take his eyes off her. He remembered how he once taught her the very first notes on a children's synthesizer, how capricious she was, not wanting to play scales. Now his daughter has become a real pianist. Pride rose in his throat. He felt pride and tenderness fill him. He caught Emma's gaze. Her eyes were also shining with tears of joy. For a moment they smiled at each other sincerely, sharing the overwhelming feeling for their daughter. After the concert, Emma's parents hugged her together and showered her with praise. The girl was beaming with happiness. Both her mom and dad were nearby, so pleased with her. Jack ruffled his sister's hair and grinned too. "Well done, musician." "Thanks, Diamond," Emma quipped back, and everyone laughed. After taking a few photos together as a keepsake, Emma took out her phone and, after a bit of hesitation, asked Jack to take them. He didn't object. The whole family went outside. It was a warm, summer evening. People were bustling about on the porch of the House of Culture, congratulating the little artists. Jack was holding his daughter's hand and watching her chat with her friend about the performance. Emma was standing nearby, frantically fiddling with the bouquet she had prepared for Emma. Jack glanced at his ex-wife without noticing. Now that the sharp pain had subsided, he could admit she had changed over the past year too. She had lost a little weight, became quieter, more modest. She lived with a burden of guilt, but tried to be better for the sake of the children. He respected at least this effort of hers. "Listen, thank you," Emma suddenly said quietly, catching his gaze. "For what?" Jack was surprised. "For coming. For always coming," she replied. "It's so important to Emma." "It's important to me too," he shrugged. "I won't miss anything that concerns my children." "I know," Emma looked down. "You're a wonderful father." Jack remained silent. He had already learned to accept compliments from her calmly, without the old resentment. Emma ran up to them. Dad, Miss Rachel and I are going to have ice cream with the class after the concert. Can I?" She folded her hands pleadingly. Jack smiled. "Of course you can. Today is your day." Emma added, "I'll go there too and make sure you don't eat too much cold food." Emma rolled her eyes. "Mom, we're not little." Jack and Emma looked at each other and smiled at this childish scene. "I'll come see you later then," Jack said to his daughter. "Have fun." Emma kissed him on the cheek. "Thanks, Dad. You're the best." The daughter ran to her classmates. Emma followed her to her car. In parting, she briefly waved her hand to Jack and Jack. "See you tomorrow." "Bye, Mom," Jack responded, not without warmth. His sister's speech had also lifted his spirits. Emma was pleasantly surprised by his tone and got into the car. When she left, Jack turned to his father. "I'll stop by my friend's house, okay?" "Okay, just for a little while," Jack nodded. His son sped off to his friend's car, which was parked nearby. Jack was left alone on the porch. Parents with children were crowding around. Laughter and congratulations could be heard. He suddenly felt that. He was fine, really calm and fine. His daughter was happy, his son was fine, he was at peace with his ex-wife. Life has improved. "Jack, A familiar voice was heard. He turned around and saw David. His friend had also come to the concert at Jack's invitation. David had become almost a member of the family, adoring his friend's nephews. "Emma is just a star today," David said happily, approaching. "I gave her a bouquet, you probably saw." "I saw it, thanks for coming," Jack patted his friend on the back. They moved away from the crowd, heading toward the parking lot. David glanced sideways at Jack and narrowed his eyes in satisfaction. "Listen, I look at you, you're just glowing. I can't recognize the gloomy guy from a year ago." Jack chuckled. "There is a little. I'm happy for you, brother," David said seriously. "You've been through so much. And now you're a living person, smiling." "It's behind us," Jack answered quietly, and realizing the truth of his words, he repeated more confidently, "Yes, it's behind us." David stopped at his car. "So maybe it's time for you to think about your personal life, because there's work and kids and no time for yourself." Jack hesitated with a smile. "Where would I?" "Come on," the friend waved his hand. "You're a handsome, decent man. Women appreciate that. Remember Janet, my neighbor's sister? She keeps asking about you." Jack laughed. "You're a matchmaker. I didn't expect that." "Well," David pouted playfully, "I can't spend my whole life on you. What if I get a woman too? Then you won't be so interesting to me anymore." "Janet, by the way, is pretty and a good housewife," he continued more lively. "She's been a widow for a couple of years, so your background is somewhat similar. I told her what a great father you are, and she really got interested." "Oh, that's enough." Jack shook his head with a smile. "Okay, I'm not pressuring you." My friend raised his hands in a conciliatory manner. "But I'll still send you Janet's number, just in case." "A hopeless case." Jack waved it off with a smile. They said goodbye, and David left. Jack stood there for a while, thinking. "I'm not ready," he told David about a new relationship. But after thinking about it, he was no longer so sure of it. The pain of betrayal no longer clouded everything around him. He began to catch himself looking at the world with open eyes and not through the prism of suffering. Sometimes he noticed attractive women somewhere in a supermarket or a cafe and caught himself thinking, "What an interesting smile," or "What kind eyes." Previously, he forbade himself such thoughts, but now he understood that the emotional wound was gradually healing, and he was ready to open up to feelings again. Well, everything has its time. Maybe in a month or a year, he will be more definitely ready for something. For now, he has what gives him meaning and joy every day. His children, his family, albeit in a new format, but still a family. Jack, he took a deep breath of the evening air and looked at the scarlet sunset sky. Life, despite everything, was beautiful and amazing. He had survived difficult trials, preserved the main thing, and only became stronger. And ahead, there was still a lot of good ahead. He believed in it. He was no longer afraid of the future, be it a new love, or just quiet family happiness next to his children. The main thing was that he felt a taste for life again and was ready to move forward. Smiling at his thoughts, Jack got into the car and drove home, where tomorrow morning his beloved son and daughter would be waiting for him, the most important value and joy of his new life. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one.